Welcome to Future Sense Now, where we explore the landscape and byways of our shared futures. An e-zine of the Futures Forum live online. We exchange ideas, information, and inspiration about the futures we want. Get Future Sense Now with host Dr. Claire Nelson, futurist and editor of Human Futures.
Greetings and salutations and welcome, friends, to Future Sense Now, an online e-magazine of the Futures Forum. And here we are, March 2022, another Women's History Month, and we are here to talk about the future history of women, or the futures of women, depending on how you like to phrase it. Same thing, you say tomato, I say tomato. Now, why are we here and what are we talking about? We're trying to talk about the year 2030 because UN Agenda 2030 is a pull year for most countries in the world. We have 17 Sustainable Development Goals, 169 targets, with everything from hunger to poverty to climate change to life under the sea, and SDG 5 speaks about women. And so I am delighted to be speaking to Shelley Brunswick, who is a voice for women in space, and she'll tell you all about her work. And so because we're talking about space, we're going to go a little bit beyond 2030, probably 2040, 2050, because we'll just be beginning to really get our teeth wet or our feet wet back on the moon by 2030. And so I want to say welcome, Shelley Brunswick. You have so many hats. I want you to tell us about which hat you want to wear today. And I'm looking forward to speaking to you. How are you, first of all?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be joining you on Women's History Month and International Women's Day just around the corner. So thank you for inviting me to join you.
Yes. So we're in Future Sense now, and here we just have conversations about futures of women. I know you are definitely an aggregator of women in space. I want to talk a little bit about that, but I want to first put us into your 2030. So we're talking about a big goal with very grandiose ideas, end poverty and hunger, promote gender equality. It sounds almost kind of a fantastic. But then here comes Shelley Brunswick, and she's actively engaged in trying to do something about it. So tell us about your response to gender equity, and how does something like SDG 5 affect your work as an advocate in the space community?
Well, it's an excellent question, and obviously during Women's History Month, a very timely one. As we look at COVID, we could see that we had a shortage in the space industry already for workforce. And then during COVID, we saw women leave the workforce to stay at home and take care of school-age children and more. We're not seeing women coming back into the workforce. So the jobs in the space industry that were open pre-COVID, it's even exacerbated. And now it's permeating other parts of the ecosystem. We are seeing workforce shortages all over the ecosystem. So what we really need to think about is, how do we invite 50% of our workforce to come back to the table? And that's how we really need to think about it. I'm very passionate about the SDGs. I am a UN Office of Outer Space Affairs mentor. I'm one of 54 around the world that look at mentoring and how do we create more equity and equality? How do we get more women and girls to come into the space industry? But it's really about thinking about solving the bottom line. So it doesn't matter to me, men or women. The bigger thing is, though, we need both men and women to be in the job market, solving all our challenges. So how do we bring 50% of our workforce back to the table?
And then I'm going to ask a question, step back and ask the question, why is it so important? So let me paint a picture of the year 2030. First of all, everybody knows about climate change. So, you can't get to monitor the climate unless you're in space. All right. We're talking about food security. Well, precision agriculture could help us do things better. So that's also using space science in some ways. And then we're talking about life of the ocean, and ocean, like saving the ocean literally from sudden death, right? Now, some of these are big systems. You really can't see the entire ocean unless you're in space. That's another reason. So we're talking about space for the SDGs. You said you're an SDG evangelist and advocate. Tell us some more, first of all, about how you see space and SDGs, and then how you see your role as a mentor for USA in space.
So when we talk about the SDGs and you're thinking about poverty or education or gender equality, those are all part of the space ecosystem, and solutions can reside in space. So let's first of all look at what is that space ecosystem. So in 2020, Space Foundation said the global space economy was $447 billion. 80% of that was commercial, meaning jobs and products and services we use here on Earth, people employed. And by 2030, that global space economy is going to grow over 1 trillion, according to Bank of America, and over 3 trillion by 2040 by CNBC. So you're seeing exponential growth. And again, what will that solve? Well, if we ensure that we're including everyone in these solutions, men and women, all ages, all regions of the world, you're looking at the SDGs that relate to poverty, that relate to food insecurity, that relate to women empowerment. So space is a critical component of solving all of those because it unlocks innovation. You said it yourself. Space is so part of everything we do. You talked about precision agriculture, monitoring the climate. It's in data analytics and robotics and artificial intelligence. It's in education and financial management, the Internet of Things, public safety, transportation. It's right here in our cell phones. So we cannot live without the space technology, and we need to embrace it because 80% is commercial. And those are jobs here on planet Earth that can solve many challenges.
So I want to ask about this issue of, first of all, the SDG 18, the fledgling movement of people. I cannot tell you, I jumped in, I joined a network. I'm not getting much information from them, but I still pretend as if it is existing anyway, because how we share the future involves the question how we share space. And this idea of sustainability and space sustainability, what is the space frontier thinking about it? Or if you can't speak for them and just want to speak for yourself, what are you, Shelley Brunswick, thinking about space sustainability?
So I think we really have to look at, we're looking at sustainability in general, and space is part of that solution, right? We talked about it already. We looked at to monitor the planet, we're doing that from space. To say we have climate change and then be able to measure it, we're doing that with Earth observation. We can then also use space technology to benefit and reduce some of the impact we have to the environment. So you talked about precision agriculture, but precision agriculture allows you to use GPS to increase your crop yields. The other thing we're doing with agriculture is you're looking at vertical farming now that doesn't require dirt, right? To go to the Mars and live on Mars and grow food, we can't use the soil on Mars. It's toxic. So what we're doing is we're learning how to do vertical farming, and we can do that where we most need it. Where are the population centers going to be? In cities. Where's the food growing? Not in cities, and we've got to transport that food to where it's needed. But if we can do vertical farming in cities and get it food to table much faster, you're reducing a lot of the impact that's cost, and it also prevents some communities that don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. So space is part of the solution to all of those things. It's not a lone solution, and I know you have some other questions about how we're going to work together, but it does provide many of the technologies that can help us overcome climate change. How are we going to work together to lower greenhouse emissions? Well, we know that space is improving the capabilities of solar panels. Right now, solar panels can get dirty, they lose efficiency, they cannot recharge. So right now, the space industry is looking at how do we create better solar panels, 30% more efficiency. The other thing they're looking at is can they self-clean? Because if you put solar panels on Mars and they get dirty, nobody's going out there to squeegee them.
Exactly.
Same thing if we put those solar panels in the desert. Can they vibrate and self-clean? But there's also helium-3 on the moon. And helium-3 is a way that we could solve our energy challenges here on planet Earth. And the best people to come to the table to help us solve those challenges are the people who most know how to mine and do energy. And that would be the oil and gas industry and the mining industry. We need them to come to the table to help us solve climate change and create a new type of energy that eliminates, and hopefully we can eventually reduce net zero.
When you're talking to some of the women in your network, are you finding women more on the side of, let's say, the earth science side, or are you finding them all over, like in the rocket side, the satellite side, the earth science side, and also this new burgeoning that's issue of space sustainability or space safety, space security, all of those things in terms of the debris and too many overcrowding and spectrum management, etc. How are you seeing women taking up positions and beginning to be finding a seat at these different tables that exist in the economy?
So a number of areas in that spectrum that we talked about jobs, I see women that are in a lot of the roles that we normally see women. So when we see healthcare and applications in space, I see a lot of women who are finding and using space innovation to solve challenges on Earth, whether it's orphan eye diseases, whether it's balance and falling accidents. I see a lot of women in that area. I do see women also, through NASA. I see wonderful women who are leading agriculture. How do we use space in agriculture? We see a few women involved in rocket science. We have SpaceX with Gwen Shotwell. But the bigger thing I don't see is enough women at the table. And I don't see enough women of color or of Latino or ethnicity or regions of the world. And so I think what we really have is we have to create role models, and we have to highlight career paths to bring all women of diversity to the table around the world.
Well, I certainly would like to be doing that. This is why you are one of my top picks for this round. I mean, as the founder of the Space Futures Forum and the co-founder of the Caribbean Space Society, I've started in my very small way since 2018 to sort of set off on this journey to say, you know what, I'm going to do it because the Caribbean needs to be at the table, and I don't see nobody talking about it. So I might as well do it since it's on my heart. And now I have like a cluster of young people that at universities in the Caribbean region just beginning this journey to build a CubeSat kit for the first time, a project, and hopefully be part of a somewhat of a launch this year. So everybody's quite excited that this is starting. And in this idea of having mentors and having partners, and I say partners because at my age, we say, well, why do you need a mentor? You're long past age of retirement almost. So yes, but still, if you're new to something and you don't exactly know all the rules and all the language, you do need to be mentored. And so do you think that, given that some of us are in the, let's say, the second career of our lives, that there is an age issue that we should be concerned about as women, or is this just for the younger scientists, or is there a role for women who are over 50 who have done one thing for 20 years and say, I want to do something different? Should women be seeing themselves as still having an opportunity to bring their vast experience and wisdom to the table and use it in this new arena? What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely believe that. I believe as we need to become lifelong learners. So as technology continues to change and evolve, we have to continue to change and evolve. So my example is, we're talking on Zoom right now, but I'm going to tell you and your audience a little story. The first time I had to talk on Zoom was 2 months after the pandemic started. I'd never used Zoom. I had to do a presentation to over 150 countries and 2,000 participants. And someone had to text me and say, mute yourself. I didn't know about muting. So obviously I know how to mute now, but that's just one of the things. As technology comes on board, all of us at all parts of our career will have to learn new skills. And that's okay. That's part of it. And so it's all part of the reskilling and upskilling. The other part is some industries or jobs may change or go away, and we're going to reskill and upskill. So here's an example. Last year, I took a 1-week master's course from the International Space University. And for me, it was a fun refresh on what's going on in the space industry. But there was also a professional in the program who was a salesperson in the pharmaceutical industry. He sold medical devices, but he had said, I always wanted to be part of the space industry, but I never knew how. But I really thought that now that space was open to all, I could bring my sales skills into the space industry and now start a new career in space, which of course is so true because we need salespeople in the space industry. I know another woman. She was in the oil and gas industry, a geologist. She also has always wanted to be in the space industry. Is there a place for her? Well, absolutely. Do you think we need a geologist to talk to us about the moon and Mars or mining? And so we have a workforce development roadmap I'll share with you on how we help individuals, not only in early career, but mid-career, come into the space industry.
That is really a good thing. I mean, I am an industrial engineer by training. I have several years of doing international development. So my first thinking is, how do I use what my skills at project design, project management, ideation, visualizing to bring communities I feel are left behind into the room doing what I do. So, set off on a journey using habits I had ingrained. As a matter of fact, I started off by first writing a story about my life as the first Jamaican on the moon, which I didn't actually intend to make happen, but now it's actually happening, sort of ish, So this roadmap, I think, is very important. How does this Space Foundation work with, let's say, HBCUs, the Hispanic Serving Institutions, international organizations and countries? I'm very connected in Africa, the Caribbean, and Pacific. Those are and small island urban states in particular. I'm concerned about their 55 members in the organization, and only Singapore is really active, in that space. So there's a lot of room for education and growth. How does the Space Foundation work, and your work as an advocate for women in particular, work to, let's say, have bridge builders like myself bring more people into the fold?
So that's a wonderful question. I'm so glad you asked. So the Space Foundation is a U.S. nonprofit, and we do business internationally. Many people know us for our annual Space Symposium that brings that global space community together. But another one of our focus areas is our Center for Innovation and Education, and that's all about lifelong learning and creating opportunities for workforce development and economic opportunity for all citizens. And then through our Global Alliance division, that's where our partnerships are. So we have partnerships with the African Union, the Organization of American States. We partner with other countries. So we're able to bring our programming to not only Colorado, where our headquarters is, but nationally in the US as well as internationally through these partnerships and funding activities so that we can create access and opportunity. So we're very passionate about not only America with disadvantaged communities, but we're also looking at that regional reach to make sure that all citizens are able to receive the training, the skills, and the opportunities that are available in the space ecosystem, from high school graduates to PhDs. And we'll meet with community leaders and country leaders to talk about how their country can more engage in the space ecosystem, because as you're talking about 2030, those are where you're going to have exponential job growth, not just in the US, but all around the world.
And that's actually very exciting to know, because as the Caribbean Space Society begins to kind of take baby steps forward, we have a very strong supporter in the person of the Vice Chancellor of the University of Guyana, who is a woman, and who said, okay, what do I need to do? I said, well, we need, a couple $1,000 just to get them the kits to get started. And she said, okay, count us in, ready to go, And I definitely think this idea, she's passionate about space. She's a social scientist, but her area is more the social value of being in space, one, and also what will happen when we become a truly space going species, and what will happen if we actually meet other species. So she's really thinking, 200-300 years ahead. She thinks she has no date on it, but she just wonders if we're prepared. And so there's all these different ways of looking at this conversation. What do you think? You have a career that was before space. I want you to tell us a little bit more about that, and then talk about What are some lessons from that career you're taking into what you're doing now?
So I always like to say my journey had 3 chapters. I had early career, mid-career, and I still think I'm in mid-career, but maybe mid-career to late mid-career. So that early career is I went in the Air Force right out of high school. So I did not know what I wanted to do. I did not have the money to go to college. And I really wanted to see the world. So that's what I wanted to do. So I joined the Air Force and I got to get stationed in Turkey and Germany and in Colorado. The great part was I did earn money for college through the GI Bill. But the other wonderful thing was the military gave you opportunity to go to school at night and use tuition assistance. So I went to school at night and on weekends and took advantage of courses the Air Force offered that were I could get college credit for. And I actually earned my associate's, bachelor's, and master's degree, all going to school at night. So what I share with your audience is take advantage of all those opportunities. Then what happened is since I had my bachelor's degree, I was enlisted. I was an HR, human relations specialist. I applied to become an officer and I had a business degree, but the Air Force was really only looking for STEM professionals. So my chance of being selected to be an officer was 12%. 1, 2, Tom Brady's number, right? 12%. Not good odds. Most people might say, why waste your time? But I was like, I'm going to apply. I want to know. And I had mentors who wrote letters. I wrote my essay. I applied. I waited, and I wasn't selected. But in that time, your application met a second selection board. So you could decide to update your application or not. Well, I updated my application, rewrote my letters, went back to my mentors, and then they did all their things and I submitted. And I went on thinking, I'm not going to be selected to be an officer. I started thinking, what's my next plan? When I was selected to be an officer in the Air Force. So that pivoted my life. The other thing that pivoted it was they selected me to be this space acquisition program manager, and I didn't know what that was. What is that? I was HR. I wanted to be HR. That's where all my friends were. They were in HR. So finally, somebody called from the Air Force Personnel Center and said, Sergeant Brunswick, we need you to go into space acquisitions, project management. That's what the Air Force needs. And I saluted and moved on. So those are some lessons that apply to everybody. Take advantage of opportunities. If your company offers you tuition assistance or free training, take it. If you have an opportunity to apply for something, but even if the odds are against you, but you're really like, I really would like this, go for it anyways. SpaceX almost went bankrupt trying to do a vertical launch vehicle that could re-land. And guess what? They eventually made it happen. They changed the course of the industry, lowered the launch cost because they came up with a new way, but they failed many times. You know what failure is? It's learning. As long as you learn from it, it'll bring you to success. So don't be afraid of trying something just because the odds are against you. And then the third thing you can see is I was afraid to go into this new thing called space acquisition. Had I not done that, we would not be here today. I don't know where I'd be, but I certainly know I'm grateful that the Air Force put me on the trajectory I am today to be in the space industry. So don't fear the unknown. So those are just a little things about my background and some of the lessons learned that I think can apply to anybody in any industry.
Yeah, and as you said, values. We've been talking about the issue of women in future history of women in space in particular, and your role as an advocate for women and women's aggregator, women's evangelist, quote unquote. At what point, I don't know if you had a percentage idea of like how many women are active now in the industry? Are we at 10%, 12%? Where do you think we are? Just, I know there's no specific number, but based on who is in the room when you're there.
So that's a really good question that it's going to be hard to answer. I do know that the Space Foundation came out with a space report on workforce, and they identified how many of some of the major countries that have space agencies are male and female. So it's all different based on country and region. Then the other thing that gets a little challenging to determine is the technology area, how many women. But I think we can all agree that we would like more women and diversity to be pursuing space and those careers. And let's not forget the careers that are machinists. and welders and manufacturing. My mother was in manufacturing. That is not a traditional role for women. She did not have a college degree. She went and waited till she got a job. She built tires on a manufacturing floor. When an opportunity came up to apply to get promoted, she applied, and eventually she became a senior manager at that plant. We don't see a lot of women pursuing manufacturing. As a matter of fact, by 2030, we will be short about 3 million individuals filling jobs in the manufacturing sector. Those are great paying jobs that you can go to. Many states have programs where you can go through an internship program at a community college and walk out of high school with that certificate, your degree from high school, a certificate in manufacturing, and walk into a great paying job. There are jobs for people with high school degrees as well as PhDs. We need to be out there highlighting that, and we need women and diversity to know that those jobs are for them as well.
So as we go forward, I'm coming to almost the wrapping up. Some more questions. This idea then of a future you want, you're working on this assiduously. Is there a future you fear?
The biggest future I fear is what I've shared with you, that divide. That divide, it used to be the divide between the have and have nots. That divide is now going to be those who can pivot to the technology and fill the jobs of the future and the jobs that are going to go away. Okay. We're in part of that transition now. We're not getting enough individuals who want to go into truck driving. We still need people to truck drive, but we do know that job is eventually going away. So we're in this transition of how do we continue to look at reskilling and upskilling people as technology changes? And we have to find a way to allow people to change with the technology. So this is an example. I talked about truck driving, but let's think about the car mechanic. How many of us have taken our car to the mechanic 30 years ago? You took your car to the mechanic. They might have kept it a week. They might have thought what was wrong. They gave you a bill and you hoped you fixed it. Now you take your car to the mechanic. They roll a computer up to your car. The car plugs into the computer and the car tells the mechanic, this is what's wrong. And your mechanic can fix it. And then you get it back maybe that day or the next day. The mechanic's job did not go away, but it changed due to technology. So what we really need to do is look at the workforce that may get left out, inner city, rural communities, other regions of the world, and say, there are great paying jobs, but you might need some certain skill sets. Or we might need to look at reskilling, upskilling you at a community college or informal internship programs or apprenticeship programs so that we can reskill and get that workforce into our ecosystem. Because what we're seeing right now is people not coming back to the workforce after COVID. A lot of that could be the need for that upskilling and reskilling, how the world has changed over the last 2 years. And that is only going to go even faster. I've read a study that between now and 2030, you could see 80% of the jobs change. Wow. They could go away, change, new jobs are created because of technology. We have to create a mindset in the future workforce. And that's something we need to partner on together for all citizens, but especially for women's and diversity.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this idea of lifelong learning, this idea that some jobs are going away, but some new jobs are coming. And there's this whole story narrative right now about people not coming back to the workforce because they just didn't like their job in the first place. So now, how do we get the word out of, hey, you might like this job? There might be, I'm thinking as I'm just brainstorming here that maybe something the Space Foundation could do is help to create videos or vignettes or simulations about different kind of, with your map already that you have, with your workforce map, that have people get a more taste, smell, feel of what this job looks like. So that's something we can talk about later, but I guess I have to wrap up because I know I could talk to you for a long time. My last question is, my favorite question is like, what's the future you want? So we're talking about the future you fear, but what's the future you want? You have been doing this. You have been going globally with this, and we have 2030 as a pull year. I want you to imagine yourself in 2030, reading an article somewhere or listen to a news broadcast somewhere, and you hear something about Space Foundation and women, and what is it that you're hearing that makes you go, yay, we did it?
Well, the first thing I want is by 2030, I don't ever want to hear about women in a title. I want to get beyond the first woman, the first African American, the first Hispanic, I want to be beyond the first. I want to be where it's commonplace every day for women and diversity to be at the table filling those jobs. So you know what? I don't want to see that in the title. But what I would like to see in the title is first woman, first African American, first Hispanic, land on the moon. And then you know what I want to hear after that? First humans land on Mars. I want to stop being divided by our gender and sex and regions of the world. And I want us to be the species of humans landing on another planet. That will be the greatest achievement. We all can work together, because those jobs to take us to land and create a colony on Mars will create amazing innovation that will benefit us here on Earth and create new jobs and opportunities that will help lift all of us. And that's what will make me happy reading that title in 2030.
Well, I think that's a good place, and I want to thank you so much, Shelley Brunswick, Vice President of the Space Foundation and their lead director on the Women's Agenda. Let me just say that you have been a delightful guest. It's been a fun talking to you. I've learned something new, and certainly hopefully out of this, I will even begin to get more closer to the Space Foundation as my own work in space continues. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been an honor to join you. And I wish everyone a wonderful Women's History Month and a wonderful International Day for Women on 8 March.
Excellent. Now, folks, that's it. You've heard it direct and live from Shelley Brunswick. And you have been listening to Future Sense Now, our online e-zine for the Futures Forum. And I'd like to just close by reminding you of one thing. We co-create the future we want. We are co-creators of our shared future. And that future is embedded in the landscape in which we are currently living, as well as in our landscape of our past. So remember, it's better to be the parent of your future than the child of your past, and go out and seize the day. And as we say in Jamaica, until next time, safe journeys.
Thank you for listening to Future Sense Now with Dr. Claire Nelson. Future Sense Now is produced by the Futures Forum in Washington, D.C. For more information, visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Remember, our futures are embedded in the landscape of our present stories. Seize the day, share this story, and share the future.